Hey everybody, it's Mark, DoctorDeadwax, and it is time for another video. This is lead-in to Deadwax 1. So what's lead-in to Deadwax? It's a new series that I'm going to start where I talk about one record from my collection, from the lead-in groove to the Deadwax and everything in between. It's going to be like a focus on one record. It's also a challenge series to replace the inbox challenge that I've done the past 2 years. Because as I said in my resolution video the other day, I don't think the inbox challenge will be back this year. It got grindy. It wasn't fun. I don't listen to records not to have fun. So, but I like a challenge. So last year I tried to do an album of the week, and I was playing clips of the records I was talking about. I was doing Canadian album of the week actually, and I was trying to play clips of the records, and I kept getting a strike against my account every week when I did that. And eventually I had to stop playing the clips, or I was going to lose my account, and that kind of made me not want to do the thing at all. So I gave up on it. So lead into Deadwax is basically going to be album of the week. But it won't be Canadian album of the week. It'll start Canadian album of the week because there's a couple Canadian albums I want to talk about, and who knows how it'll evolve throughout the year. Maybe it'll be the whole year Canadian, maybe it won't. But it's going to start Canadian album, but it's going to probably over the course of a year go elsewhere. Also, there'll be a video up every week in the series. If I miss a week, then somebody's going to get a prize, like a reward of some sort. I haven't figured out how I'll do that, but I'm hoping I don't have to. I'm hoping I get a video up every week. So I had also said in my resolution video that it seems that the VC has evolved lately to becoming almost about consumerism. And a lot of videos now are just, this is what I bought, this is what I bought, this is what I bought. And not so much talking about the records. And I'm not saying that the VC was great then and is shit now, because I don't actually believe that. I think the VC is better now than it was then. I think it's a much more vibrant, larger community. I just think sometimes I see people say, I don't want to make videos because I haven't bought any new records. And I know people who don't make videos anymore who've walked away because they don't have the money to buy records, but they have amazing collections. And people have amazing record collections, and they don't want to talk about the records that are in them. They just want to talk about what they bought. And I know in a sense I'm part of the problem too, because I have my After the Dig series where I show what I bought, and I don't talk about the music because I haven't listened to it yet. But I do have the Out of the Inbox series where I eventually get around to listening to some of those records and talking about them. So, so this is, I say don't bitch about what's wrong with the vinyl community, but be the VC you want the VC to be. And so that's what this is. I've got this series where I'm going to talk about records from my collection, and I've got another series that I'm going to do where I talk about records from my collection in another way. And I'm not saying that I want other people to jump on this insanity of doing record week. That's not what I'm saying. But maybe it'll inspire some people to pull some records out of the collection and revisit the videos they're making in different ways by doing showcases on artists or genres, or Gimme Tens, which are great, where it's great to see records coming out of people's collections for those, or taking part in more contests, more threads, because contests are threads with prizes. They're still threads. Just more discussion that isn't just this is what I bought, this is what I bought, this is what I bought. So, taking a dose of my own medicine in a sense. So that's it. So there'll be a video every week, and let's get started. So the first record I'm going to talk about is from this artist. This is Valdi. He's a Canadian folk singer, well known for the beard. I've talked about this record before, Countryman. This was his first record. It was released on Haida. The biggest hit of his career was on this rock and roll song. Also, Countryman is on there, which was a bit of a hit. What I'm going to talk about instead is his second record, Landscapes. This record was recorded in reaction to the success, relative Canadian success of that record. So this is Landscapes. This is his second record. This one's a little beat up. It's an old radio station copy. But it's got this beautiful landscape painting on the inside of the cover. This is by Eric Rode, Canadian artist. I used to be an art dealer, and a Canadian art dealer. And I would classify Eric Rode as a lesser Canadian artist, not to diminish his talent, but just most Canadian artists are lesser. We have a very strange art market, very depressed almost every country in the world. You could probably buy this painting from him for a couple $100. It's very weird the way our market works. So again, Valdi's known for the beard. So he recorded that first record, and he had some success with it. You know, a couple not #1 songs, but hit singles. And he was on the label Haida, which was distributed by A&M, and they decided to send him down to LA. Put him together with like the best studio musicians that they could get, and boy did they get a set of studio musicians. I'm going to talk about them in a minute, and see what they could get from this guy. Now Valdi, the first record is kind of a stripped down hippie folk kind of record from 1971 or 2. So it's totally of its time. He's not an overly political folk singer, though. He's more like, sometimes he's more like some of the songs are political, but some of the songs are just kind of like fun little catchy folk songs. So so he's of that vein. You know how sometimes Arlo had like you know, the motorcycle song and stuff like that. So yeah, he's got these kind of fun little ditties, as well as songs that are a little bit more have a bit more depth to them, let's say. So they decided to send him down to LA, and they put him together with a cast of this incredible group of studio musicians. And I'll just go through them, who they are. Ron Tutt on drums, most famous for being Elvis's drummer for over a decade. Also drummed on countless studio records, and I think he was in Neil Diamond's touring band for years after Elvis was gone. John Guerin on percussion. He was in the Byrds. He was also in LA Express. He was also in Joni Mitchell's touring band for years. John Guerin also dated Joni Mitchell for a while. Again, also a very active studio musician. Max Bennett on bass. Max Bennett is not only a rock bassist, but he's also a jazz bassist. He's also a studio musician on top of that. He is maybe most famous for being the bass player on Hot Rats by Frank Zappa. He was also played on songs on Steely Dan's Asia. Next, Larry Carlton guitar. Larry Carlton, this guy is everywhere. There was a period in his career where he was on over 500 records a year. That is how prolific a studio musician Larry Carlton was. And he was also in the Crusaders, LA Express. See that LA Express? It comes up again. Foreplay, played on Steely Dan records, several of them. Most famous to probably most people's ears for being the guy who played the guitar on the theme to Hill Street Blues. Next on piano is Joe Sample, giant in the jazz field, in the Crusaders. There's the Crusaders again, also in LA Express. So there's this huge connection between LA Express and this record and these highly, highly talented and polished studio musicians. So they sent them all down there, and they sent them down with a guy named Claire Lawrence. Claire Lawrence also sang background vocals on this record, and he played saxophone. So Valdi is, I think he's son of a Czech immigrant who grew up around Ottawa, Ontario, spent some time with the London Town Criers in the 1960s. I think that was a folk band. Then went to Montreal and joined, I think it was a rock band, the Prodigal Sons. Then made his way out to the west coast of Canada, where he was subsequently signed with Haida. The Haida label, of course, the Haida Indians being from the west coast as well. Out there, he meets somebody named Claire Lawrence, who I'm talking about, who produced a couple songs on this record, and then they sent him with Valdi to LA to produce this record. And Claire Lawrence, while not a name a lot of people might be familiar with, he was a pretty big producer in his day, but he was also in a Canadian band from the West Coast that was called The Collectors that morphed into Chilliwack, who he was also in for their first record or two before he left to go out and be a full-time producer. So, you know, he's the guy that produced the record. Now, the background singers, since I mentioned that he also sang background singers. Clyde King sings background on this. She sang often with a couple other women. One of the other women is on this record too. Her name is Shirley Matthews. So Clyde King and Shirley Matthews, what are they known for? Humble Pie, B.B. King, Rolling Stones, Steely Dan, Bob Dylan, Linda Ronstadt, Dickie Betts. Shirley Matthews sang the background vocals on Sweet Home Alabama by Leonard Skinner. Shirley Matthews also moved to Australia for a while and recorded on John Farnham's album, who all of our Australian brethren love, their beloved Farnsey and Bronze. Mary McCall also sang on this record. I can't quite find out much information from her. It might be the Mary McCall who was a generation older than all these musicians and was a jazz singer in the 30s and 40s and subsequently ended her career as a lounge singer at LAX in the 70s. Also, the other background singer on one or two songs on this record was a Canadian singer named Kathy Stack. Kathy Stack has a psych folk record that's kind of valuable that was released on the Ptarmigan label out of Canada. She now works on a fishing boat with her husband off Salt Spring Island, again another West Coast Canadian place, and she's still songwriting and performing. So quite the cast of characters. Added into this cast of characters, one of the people who was helped as an assistant engineer on the record was Tom Vicari, who went on to engineer Phantom of the Paradise, Starcastle Records, records from Prince, and then mastering on this record was the great Bernie Grundman. And Bernie Grundman, at this time, I guess, was working for... So here's this Haida label. That he was signed to, Valdi, and it's just a fantastic label. But you can also see down here at 6 o'clock the MR in the circle for Monarch Records, and you can see CAN there as well for Canada. So Bernie Grundman mastered this record at Monarch Records, which is they did Doors records. The Monarch Records is one of the great mastering facilities. If you see MR in a circle in their Deadwax, you're almost guaranteed to have a pretty good sounding record. So, and then the hand scripted CAN there, that indicates that the plates were made there and they were destined, they were earmarked to come to Canada to be used, to be the plates that were used, because this record was actually manufactured in Canada from US plates. So there's this whole history that goes along with this record of these great musicians, and they made a record that sounds fantastic. This is a wonderful sounding record. It's very well produced. It's very well mastered. The performances from these musicians are just incredible. This is not as stripped down and gritty as his first record. This is not as in the folk club kind of sound. It's much more polished performance on this record. And some of the songs that are on this record it's the title track, Landscapes. So the title track is about a guy and a girl that are in love, and then they break up, and the girl travels around North America. She's a painter, and she travels to different places, and one of them is too stubborn to contact the other one or something like that. But at one point in the lyrics, she winds up working off the west coast of California on a fishing boat. And I think that, perhaps the song is about Kathy Stack, who sang background vocals on a different track on this record, because it's kind of a strange coincidence that she works on a fishing boat off the west coast of Canada, or it could be completely irrelevant. And that's a really good song. Another song on here is Gypsy Ways, Jabba Jeff. That's kind of like one of the fun songs I was talking about a guy who gets up and has a cup of coffee every morning, and it's just kind of a silly little tune. Christian Life is more of a standard kind of folk parable about Christians being overly judgmental and for judging him for smoking weed, for example. So it's kind of got that hippie tie-in on that one. Passing Through is another one. Trucker's Song. That one's kind of fun. It's about a trucker whose brake fails, and then he sings a list of call-outs to various deities, Krishna, Jesus, everybody, as he's coming down the side of the mountain without any brakes. Other songs on here, Roads of Anger, Simple Life, but an excellent cover of Gordon Lightfoot's Bitter Green is on here. City Musician, Arnold's Cove, and Whirl and Twirl and Swirl. And the funny thing about Gordon Lightfoot is at one time in the mid-70s, I mean, Gordon Lightfoot in Canada, it's a very small country, population-wise. So when he was popular, it was kind of like a vacuum in the folk industry. But number 2 selling folk musician after Gordon Lightfoot in Canada was Valdi for about 4 or 5 years in the mid-70s. I would have thought it was Bruce Cockburn, but I was wrong. So there we go. I mean, this series, I'm not going to show the essential records that you need to buy or the best records in my collection. They're just going to be kind of interesting records that I want to talk about, that I come across as I'm going through my collection looking for records. And when I came across this one, I thought, you know, this would be a good one to talk about. This, to me, is not the greatest record, but there'll be clips, if there's anything on YouTube down below, there'll be some links for you to go out and sample it, because, you know, if you're into singer-songwriter, if you're into hippie folk, psych folk, this record might really be your thing, and that's kind of what the focus of this is. It's not just to show records I think are amazing, but to talk about interesting records that for me might be okay, but for somebody else might be an amazing record. So that's the first one. This is Valdi Landscapes. So that's it. I'll see everybody in a week. Have a great day, everybody. Keep the record spinning.